Thank you, Twyla.
Good turnout. It's a good turnout.
Over here. Just waiting for satellite time.
For satellite to pick up.
Huh?
For satellite. Sorry if I get you sick.
Oh, no, no. Don't worry about it. I'm not that fragile.
Just can't shake this cough.
I know you spend too much time with all the
Think
kids.
if that one's off.
Huh?
Think if that one's off.
Yeah.
Get up late to it. Big satellite bang.
There we go. Good evening. I'd like to call the Lisbon Town Council meeting for Tuesday, March 17th to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item, please.
Is roll call. Counselor Garrison?
Present.
Counselor Lunt?
Here.
Counselor McTevier?
Here.
Counselor Bickford?
Here.
Counselor Pesky?
Here.
Counselor Kraus?
Here.
And Counselor Brunel.
Here.
Before we move on, I'd like to just make sure the public knows we did add one item to the agenda under item number 6, consent agenda, item 2015-63. We added the minutes of March 3rd, 2015 to that order. The updated agenda is on the side wall. And the next item, please.
Is good news and recognition?
I'd like to open the floor for the council for any good news and recognition you might have. See anything? Nothing. At this time, we'll move forward.
Next item is the public hearing for the non-stormwater discharge ordinance.
I'd open the floor for audience or the public hearing for non-stormwater. Seeing none? Next item, please.
Is the public hearing for the post-construction stormwater management.
Open the public hearing. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Next item, please.
Is section 47-4, the street excavation amendment for public hearing.
I'd open the public hearing. Seeing none, close the public hearing. And the next item, please.
Audience participation and response for agenda items.
So I'm going to open the floor for audience participation. Mr. Fellows.
My name is Don Fellows, and I have a couple of comments and a question. As you know, I'm a former member of the Town Finance Committee and the Advisory Board back when it existed, and I have some background regarding the question I'm about to ask. But I do respect the authority of the Town Council, and I think it's good. I have a good understanding of the responsibilities given by state law and by our charter. With regard to school budgets, I also know that counselors act as directors of the regional school unit for this budget process. And there will be a town council approved budget, and the citizens will get to vote it up or down, and the process may continue from there. But all that aside, I hope that I get a clear answer tonight to my one question. And while the council, and that question concerns the local fund and not local fund issue. While the council has the right to amend the school budget and to increase or decrease it, our charter states that the council may add to or decrease the total amount of the school budget. But the charter does not say that the council may make changes to the local additional funds or any other subtotals. I also know that the council will ultimately vote on several articles for the school budget because they vote on them line by line or have a roll call vote. And I believe there are 13, 14, 15 articles that get voted on. My question is in two parts for Mr. Stockford or any of the town council. He has stated that he believes that the council has the authority, and I ask just how we make that leap from the total budget control to anything else, which includes state funding of local shares. It is because of individual school budget articles that require a roll call vote, or is it some other judicial precedent? I guess what I'm saying is, I know that the individual budget items are individually voted on by the council, and I know that some of those are local funding. Is it that authority right there? That's the only thing I'd like answered. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe your question will be answered when Mr. Stockford addresses the council. Anybody else? Ms. Fitzgerald?
I see that some bids have been accepted on town-owned property. I'd like to know when and where these properties were advertised. At the last meeting, there was a vote on Article 2015-46 that the town council moved to authorize the town manager to proceed to advertise the sale and accept sealed bids on tax-acquired property as recommended by the town manager. I didn't see any advertisements. I always read the small print, I've just told you, and I even have a little magnifying glass right by my chair where I read the paper, and I haven't seen any of those properties advertised. Second thing, I don't know, I'm assuming there's going to be something about the police department tonight, but at the last meeting, previous meeting, on the forfeiture funds, Chief of Police Brooks was naming off the different things he was going to use to purchase with those funds, and he used abbreviations. It would be nice, I don't know what those abbreviations stand for. It would be nice if he explained them out rather than just used abbreviations. Not all of us know what he's talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Ms. Austin?
Tracy Austin, 72 Webster Road. Asking the council when the town attorney is giving his presentation if there was going to be any chance to ask additional questions, whereas I don't know what it is he's going to be stating and in what manner, if I can ask clarifying questions at that time.
I'm not planning on opening it to the public after.
Okay, so in that case, I would ask, follow up with Mr. Fellows' issue regarding where the local contribution comes in, whereas the past practice has been the increase or decrease of the entire budget. I would want absolute clear explanations, and I would ask that he would dumb it down so that I can understand it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Bowie.
David Bowie, 140 Upland Road. Since apparently you aren't going to allow anyone to speak from the public when the attorney is here, I want to echo the questions. I think Charlie Smith made a comment at your last meeting. I was the vice chairman of the Charter Commission, and we wrote the charter to give the authority of the budget in two different ways. It was split to create a balance of powers. The council has the overall say as to the total amount. The school committee is responsible for their work, and they were given the authority to work within that total amount. I don't hear that interpretation being cleared up yet. It's quite clear to me when I read the charter, which says the council may adopt the school budget as proposed and may amend it, but such amendments shall be limited to adding or decreasing the total amount of the budget. So I would echo the same question, and I'll tell you quite clearly, the intent of the charter is to give the school committee the line item authority within the total set by the council.
Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Willie?
Pardon me if I cough.
I have the same cough, so we'll be together.
Okay, we can infect everybody. Dean Willie, 30 Oak Street, Lisbon Falls, Maine. I had a question. I don't know if it's been addressed or because the budget is very long. It's 180-something pages. I'd
Last year, there was a $250,000 designation to the undesignated, or to replenish the undesignated fund, I think it was called, or something to that effect. Is that was to start to replenish the undesignated fund, for lack of a better term, undesignated fund, where the council was pulling from that fund over the years. And I think Mr. I forget what his name that was here. Olmsted recommended that we put the money back. I was just wondering if that $250,000 is going to continue to be put back, or was it a one-time thing? And if it is in this year's budget, or are we skipping years, or I'm not sure. And also last year, he mentioned Mr. Olmsted mentioned the $75,000 for cable. I forget what it's called. It's for cable franchises, and we didn't receive that. The $75,000, was that put into last year's budget, and did we spend that, even though we didn't get it? Or what's the status of that? I'm not sure.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Dot, to answer your question on the advertisement, I believe that I saw the advertisement for the properties in the paper, and the town manager does have a copy of that if you'd like to see it. We haven't sold the properties yet. It's on the agenda tonight for the council to do an official vote to sell those properties to the bidder. And Mr. Willie, regarding the budget, I believe what you're referencing is every year the council uses a certain amount of money out of the undesignated funds to help offset the tax base or the mill rate increase every single year. So last year was the first year where the council decided we're not going to take any money from the undesignated funds. So the $250,000 decrease in a revenue line, for say, that the council had to make up somewhere else. And because of the undesignated fund is so low at this point, when the town manager put the budget together, she did not account for taking money out of the undesignated fund, so that we will not be using this year in the proposed budget. And the $75,000 for the cable franchise agreement, that was a budgeted revenue line into the budget, and we didn't get that money. You are correct. So the manager is working very closely with managing the budget to ensure that we don't go over any more than we have to. And she has included or accounted for that in this budget proposal that she has put together. And Mr. Bowie, thank you very much for your clarification, your perspective on being part of the Charter Commission. I really appreciate that input. Does council have anything else you'd like to add? All right. Next item, please.
Next item is the consent agenda. Anyone wishing to have any item removed may do so now. Order 2015-63 to approve the mass gathering permit for the No. 1 flea market and the minutes of February 24 and March 3.
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Next item, please. And I would like to move on to under 8A, the budget discussion with legal counsel.
Right now?
As soon as we get into the council orders and resolutions.
Okay, so we're under council orders, ordinances, and resolutions at this point. So we want to move to other business, budget discussion with legal.
Yes, please.
Thanks. So budget discussion with legal.
Mr. Stockford? Good evening. Long time no see.
Good to see you.
So I don't know if you would like the council to ask you any questions, or you want to give a brief overview of our discussion that we had and your memo that you've sent out to the council, or how you like to address it, whatever you would feel more comfortable with.
Sure. I'd be happy to. Why don't I give some thoughts, and then you can go ahead and ask me anything that I've failed to help clarify.
We'll do that.
When you're looking at the relative authority of the council and the school committee over the school budget, you need to look at both the charter and the provisions of state law that govern approval of budgets. And the charter is very clear that the council has the authority to approve the total amount of the school budget, and that the school committee ultimately, based on what that budget amount is, can adopt amendments in the school budget as may be necessary to absorb any decrease or expend any increase in the total amount of the budget that was approved by the council. So that indicates that the school committee ultimately decides how money is going to be spent. They're in charge of the total budget and how it's going to be applied across the different cost centers. And as you know, there's 11 different cost centers that are provided by state law. And if you don't have ultimate authority to approve those cost centers, so ultimately, if you approve a total amount of the school budget that is less than what the school committee proposed, then it would go back to the school committee, and they would decide how to apportion those cost centers, and then their apportionment would be posted at the polls at the budget validation referendum. So absolutely, the school committee has full authority over the expenditures and how those are going to be apportioned. The Maine law provides that when a municipal charter confers upon a municipal council authority to determine the total amount of the school budget and confers on the school committee authority to direct the expenditure of those funds for school purposes, and I think that's exactly what the Lisbon Charter does, then the municipal council determines the total amount of the school budget to be submitted to referendum, and the school committee determines the allocation of the approved school budget among the cost centers of the cost center summary budget format. So that confirms exactly what I just said in regard to the charter, that you have authority over revenues, the school committee has authority over expenditures. Yep. As far as your authority over the additional local funds article, there's 3 different revenue articles in the school budget, and as well as the total budget article. And section 15690 of Title 20A makes very clear that you, as the legislative body of the school unit, have the authority to approve each of those articles. And not only that, you need to do it by a recorded vote. So each of those articles you are required by law to vote upon. So to suggest that the additional local funds article where you exceed the maximum spending target that is established by law, there needs to be specific language authorizing that number to be exceeded. And again, that needs to be done by a recorded vote. So I think it's very clear under state law that the council has the authority and the need to adopt each of those articles. And in order for the budget to be enacted, there needs to be a positive vote on each of those articles. To the extent that there's a suggestion that somehow the charter preempts that requirement, that's not the way I interpret it. I think that those requirements of state law are very clear, and I don't believe that the charter has authority to preempt the need to take a recorded vote on each of those articles. So the bottom line is, as the council, I think you can set the expectation for the school committee as far as what you are prepared to authorize for purposes of additional local funds to be raised, and request the school committee to come back with a budget that falls, that falls within that and allows that amount of additional local funds to be raised. If the school committee comes back with a different budget that requires the raising of local funds over and above what your expectation was, then you have the decision, well, should we approve the budget as proposed? Should we approve the total budget? or should we reject it? And, or should we approve some different amount? And that is your prerogative as the municipal council, and ultimately, anything that you approve as far as the total school budget will need to go back to the voters, will need to go to the voters and be approved at the budget validation referendum. So, so I certainly do not dispute in any way that the school committee has the authority to apportion the school budget and determine how the money that you authorize to be raised and expended for school purposes is going to be used. But when you look at both the statute and the charter, I believe that it's clear that you have the authority to determine what the total amount of the school budget is, including how much money you're going to raise for that budget. So that's sort of an overview of my view on it, and I'd be happy to take any questions for purposes of clarification.
Thank you. I'd open the floor to council. Any question you might have for Mr. Stockford?
Gave them all to you.
These are my questions. I don't know what you have. Do you have anything down there?
No, I'll let you go ahead.
Do you have anything over here? All right.
Got the list.
I do. I've
Yeah.
got one.
Go ahead.
So just to make it clear, if we've asked the school to cut X amount of dollars, can the school, they can make their cuts? It's not from just certain line items. It can be from any place they want to make the cuts. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that is their ultimate authority.
Right, that's what I thought, yeah.
They decide where any
Right.
cuts are going to be made and how the
Correct.
dollars are going to be apportioned among the different
Right.
cost centers.
So, I mean, in other words, we're the ones deciding the size of the pie, and the school committee decides how the pie is divided up.
Exactly, exactly.
But their hands are not tied as far as where they want to cut from. They can cut any place they want out of that budget, correct?
No, that's their decision. I mean, that is their ultimate authority. And,
Right.
and I think, from a policy perspective, that makes a lot of sense, that
Absolutely.
that they're in charge of the schools, so they should be determining how to divvy up that pie within the school department.
Yep.
Now, I know I didn't want to be a school committee member. If I wanted to be a school committee member, I would have ran for the school board. So I have no interest in actually going in and figuring out where to do the cuts for the school department. So I'm glad you asked that question, Eric, because when Mr. Green was here, he portrayed it that by the council targeting a revenue line for the additional local funds, that any reduction that they're going to have to make because the council has set an expectation for what we're prepared to raise, was going to have to come from certain line items, which was not going to be the full budget. So thank you for asking that question, Eric, and I appreciate your clarification. I think the big difference, or maybe I think the public is confused, is we're not targeting a expense line. We're targeting a revenue line that we're raising above and beyond what is required. So we're not saying you need to cut, $50,000 worth of water. We're targeting a revenue line which is not, the council is not restricted from doing, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
It's up, you can determine how much should be raised and appropriated for the total school budget, and the school committee can decide how they're going to use that total amount among their various priorities. So.
And the other question that I had talked with you about earlier, and I think I'm just going to ask again so the public can hear it. If the council didn't target the additional local funds line, really our options to reduce the school budget are limited in a sense, because then we would have to reduce the required local share, and then we get into problems with EPS. Is that correct?
Correct. I mean, in order for the school department to be eligible to receive the state allocation for EPS, the town needs to raise a certain dollar figure for the local share on EPS. And that's why, if you're looking at revenues, it doesn't make sense to cut the EPS line. It's the additional local funds that sort of is the incremental additional amount that would go toward the school budget.
All right. And the other question I had was, some people are in the community are questioning the council voting on the additional local funds on a separate night compared to when we do the full school budget adoption. Do you have, and you've saw our budget schedule, do you have any problems with us doing that from a legal perspective?
I would argue that that's a responsible thing to do if that's sort of what your expectation is for what you're prepared to approve toward the total budget. I think voting, and I would suggest that you take a vote that, it's the expectation and request of the council that the school committee present a budget that requires, a total budget amount that requires the raising of, whatever amount of local funds you believe to be appropriate to be raised for the schools. So, I think that makes sense because it gives the school committee a heads up in advance as to sort of where you want to end up from a appropriation standpoint, and that should inform the school committee's decision. Now, that doesn't mean they can't come in with a request for more, and you obviously can decide when you ultimately vote on the school budget whether you agree that the school committee that more dollars make sense, or that fewer dollars make sense. So.
Because if they do come in with a budget that is not in line with the expectation the council set, then we can, as you said earlier, adopt what they bring us or they send to us, reject it completely, or we can vote and change the numbers in their budget, and they have to go back and they have to redistribute the money accordingly. So really our vote, as we had a discussion of, is really a vote to inform them of what will be coming down the line when we do a final vote for the school budget.
Yeah, and the hope would be that ultimately the budget approval process would go smoother as a result of that.
Yeah. That answers all my questions. Does the council have any other questions from Mr. Stockford? All right. You mean Diane? No. Well, I really appreciate you coming in tonight. It's very clear for me. I hope it cleared it up for the public and members of the council, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Is order 2015-64, the fiscal year 2013 Homeland Security grant application.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Memo in the packet kind of clarifies what we're looking for. We received notification that there was additional funds that were available through the county EMA. If I can find my sheet. The allocation was for $42,256.44. And then when that was split up amongst the 55 eligible entities, which included Public Works, it was approximately $29,000 pie for those 55 different entities. All we had to do was send an email saying that we would like to apply for that funding, and then however many people applied, they'd basically divvy up the funds that were available. Only 11 entities expressed an interest in applying for the available funding, which allowed for each one of us to receive approximately $2,722. And we're requesting permission to apply for those available funds to purchase some signs and two-way radios for flagging and whatnot.
Any questions from council? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the grant.
Any discussion? I just want to thank Ryan for seeking other revenue sources and not just spending out of the budget and going outside the scope. I really appreciate that extra step you have took. We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed 7-0.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-65 ATRC projects.
Welcome back.
I'd like to do these all at once. Part of Lisbon's a member community of the Androscoggin Transportation Resource Center, which is made up of, talked about this over and over, made up of Lewiston, Auburn, Lisbon, and Sabattis. DOT allocates a certain amount of funding to that group, which then there's a technical committee and a policy committee, and we basically get together and discuss the projects that we have in the various communities, rank them on a technical merits, and then policy gets to decide based on politics, if you will. Part of the process is every year, it seems like every year, we have to submit a list of projects that get funneled up to DOT. They're ranked and whatnot, and part of that requirement is, which hasn't really been enforced, was public participation, and we haven't had a whole lot of formal public participation when it comes to the projects that we've submitted. So we're here tonight to discuss the projects that have already been in the pipeline for a couple of years, but because they hadn't received funding, we needed to keep applying so that way they'd make it to the top. It seems like every time we apply for, the last few that we've applied for on 196, they immediately jumped to the top of the list, which has been really good for us. The Frost Hill Avenue to Capitol Avenue project, which will happen this summer, is a project that came through this process. The next segment that we applied for was from Capitol Avenue through to Main Street intersection on 196 as well. That is again at the top of the list for the 2018-19 timeframe. And we had also applied for Village Street's been on the list, I think, since I started 14 years ago. And that doesn't seem like it's ever going to move up the list very far based on its traffic volumes and whatnot. I did learn, after I'd already submitted my recommendation, was that School Street and a portion of Webster Road are also corridors that are eligible to receive this additional funding. So School Street, in my mind, would be the next priority. But basically, I'm here to ask for endorsement of the two projects that we have on the list right now, which are Village Street and Route 196. I did want to make a comment that Main Street, all of Main Street, basically from 196 to the compact line, which is just after Summer Street, as well as intersection improvements at Main Street and 196, are already in schedule, pipeline, however you want to call it. So that's why those particular projects aren't on this list. And or keep trying to pick away at 196 because it seems like that's the only way we're going to get it paved. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions?
Main Street project, isn't that scheduled for this summer?
No, it's right now it's in project development or whatever, engineering, design. Anticipate having some meetings. They'll have a full public hearing and everything, just like it happened when they did Route 9 and when they've done Upland Road. So there'll be a formal public hearing that'll be advertised, and my guess that won't be until next year at this point.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else have questions? Thank you, Ryan. This time I'd open the floor for a motion.
Make a motion to accept the Village Street 196, the two plans.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you, Ryan. Next item, please.
Order 2015-66, Maine Bureau of Highway Safety Grant.
Chief Brooks.
Good evening. I believe you all have my memo dated March 12th.
Yep.
Another Maine Bureau of Highway Safety grant is now in the application period. It's the 2-week seatbelt safety and enforcement program. This is a nationwide program. In Maine, they call it Buckle Up, No Excuses. Nationwide, they call it Click It and Ticket. So last year, the department applied for and received $3,000. This year, I'm likely going to be going after about half of that, be plus or minus, but I'd be in the half range of that. And again, it's just for that 2-week period. So looking for your consent to move forward.
Any comments or questions? There are no matching funds with this grant, correct? All right.
So what do
Thank
you, Chief, what do you spend the money on with this program, on those 2 weeks? What do you actually do with it?
It's overtime.
Okay.
Puts extra officer out
Guys
there
on
on
the street
overtime.
to, okay, makes sense.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the grant.
Is there a second?
Second.
And just make it clear, this isn't accepting a grant, this is to authorize the police chief to go,
Right.
go to solicit the grant.
Right.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-67, schedule MS4 workshop.
If you recall at the last meeting, Dennis spoke a little bit about the MS4, what the requirements are for the municipalities. And he said at that time that we needed to schedule a workshop to meet some of the requirements. And we would like to do that on March 31st at 7 p.m. Phil Ruck will do the presentation on stormwater management and what it means to municipalities. And Sabatis is going through this at the same time as we are, and they have contracted with Phil Ruck as well, and they've been invited to attend as well to meet their requirements. So I just need you to schedule the workshop for Tuesday, March 31st at 7 p.m. And that's all we'll be discussing at that time, is the MS4.
Council have any comments or questions for that? I was just checking my calendar.
Yeah.
I can do that. Sounds fine to
Good?
me.
All right.
Fine with me.
Do you want an official vote?
Yes, please.
I'd open the floor for a motion to set the workshop.
I'll make the motion, set a workshop for March 31st.
I'll second that.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you for setting that up, Diane. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-68, update budget schedule.
In your package, whoops, you have an updated budget schedule.
Page 29 for the public, if you're looking.
So on March 24th, I'd like to do the library, police, and fire. March 31st will just be for the MS4 workshop. Then on April 7th, we'll do public works, solid waste, parks, and recreation. And then April 14th, we'll do the remaining departments. And then we can schedule more if needed later on in April, and we still have all of May if we need to have more workshops. But we had to revise this one due to the extension that I got on my budget for 2 weeks, so we're behind schedule on having the workshops. So from April 21st all the way to June 16th, nothing changed. It's just from April 14th up.
Any comments or questions? All right. Open the floor for a motion.
Make the motion to accept the new workshop schedule.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-69, tax acquired bids.
We did advertise several properties for sale. It went into the Sun Journal. It didn't get in the day that I wanted it to. I was told it could get in on Sunday and ended up in on Tuesday. They had a problem on their end, so it did get in the paper, and I believe we also posted it on our website, and we did post it on the doors as well. Out of the properties that we did put up for sale, I had 4 people pay in full. As you recall, you authorized me to accept payment in full and issue a quitclaim deed back. So there were 4 properties that I did get paid in full. And out of the remaining properties, we did receive bids on 3 properties, as I mentioned in my letter here, in my memo. So right now, what we'd like to do is to award the bid on tax acquired property for the highest bidders, which would be the 384 Lisbon Street to Pat Malloy in the amount of $10,135, 9 Gendron Drive to Pat Malloy in the amount of $3,120, and 9 County Road to Carl Houston Jr. in the amount of $2,575. And those were all the highest bids. And there are remaining properties that I didn't get bids on, and we'll have to figure out what we're gonna do with those. I think some we could put back out with no minimum bid this time. And I believe there's at least one that we'll never get a bid on, and we're probably gonna have to dispose of. It's a trailer that some of the walls are gone on it, and it's, I don't know if the owner is trying to tear it down or what, but we'll have to figure out what to do with that one.
Do you remember off the top of your head how many properties you didn't get bids for?
3.
Any comments or questions from council? All right, I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the bids from Pat Malloy and Kyle Houston.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Thank you, Diane, for your work with this.
Oh, I do want to mention one more thing.
Okay.
We have, to date now, collected almost $122,000 in tax-acquired property. We started aggressively collecting in January. And we still have a little bit outstanding, but I anticipate most of those are going to be paid in full, except for what we have to put out to bid again.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-70, the non-storm water discharge ordinance. This is the second reading. It will require a roll call vote.
All right. Nothing has changed since the last time, correct? I didn't see any changes. I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion for the stormwater discharge ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay. Roll call, please.
Counselor Lund?
Yes.
Counselor Brunel?
Yes.
Counselor McTevier?
Yes.
Counselor Crafts?
Yes.
Counselor Pesky?
Yes.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
And Counselor Garrison.
Yes.
You have 7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
Thank you. And the next item, please.
Order 2015-71, the post-construction stormwater management. This is a second reading. Roll call vote required.
I didn't see any changes in this one either. Did anybody else? All right. I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion to accept the post-construction stormwater management.
Is there a second?
Second.
I put the Councilor Garrison as a second on that motion. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Counselor Garrison?
Yes.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Crafts?
Yes.
Counselor Pesky?
Yes.
Counselor Mentivier?
Yes.
Counselor Brunel?
Yes.
And Counselor Lund.
Yes.
7 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
And the next item, please.
Order 2015-72, Section 47-4, Street Excavations Amendment. Second reading. Roll call vote required.
Didn't see any changes on this one either. Are there any comments or questions? I'd open the floor for a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? See none. Roll call vote, please.
Counselor Pesky?
Yes.
Counselor McTevier?
Yes.
Counselor Brunel?
Yes.
Counselor Lund?
Yes.
Counselor Crafts?
Yes.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Garrison.
Yes.
Yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
Great. And the next item, please.
Under other business, municipal budget presentation.
Diane.
Okay. I'm not going to go through budget
No.
by budget, but I'm going to just talk about the highlights and talk about what the budget that I've presented right now, which is a very rough draft. It's going to change as we move forward. But what it looks like right now with what the school, what I've proposed and what the school has proposed. So for the budget comparison right now, my municipal budget is down $109,878. It's really less than that because what I have done this year that we have not done in the past is we have budgeted all the expenses for the departments and primarily the rec department, and we've budgeted the revenue as well. So there's included in that decrease, or in my total budget, there's about $71,000 additional expenses that I have budgeted this year. But I also have that on the revenue side. So really, that $109,000 is really $71,000 less than that if you net the two together. And the other thing is Public Works excavation revenue, and that's an offsetting revenue for what we provide for for services for digs for the water department or the sewer department. So I've built in the expense, and I've also built in the revenue, so that's also a net of 0. And that's all included in my $7,293,000 figure, and with both of those included, my decrease is $109,000. And the county budget is up $23,004. The revenue sharing, I did what I was requested to do, is plan for not getting that fully funded in next year's budget. So I decreased that $150,000, so I'm anticipating $370,000, even though the governor says he is not going to touch that this year. But I have reduced it to plan ahead for future years. So in my other revenues, because I have increased, I have budgeted the rec department revenue and some other things, my actual other revenues are up $20,783. And that's with the $75,000 taken out for Time Warner. I am still up $20,783 over last year. So, after using those figures, I did a tax rate calculation sheet based on the values, the homestead values, the Betty values, all of that as what we have in this current budget right now. We know those are going to change because of the reval and other things, but I did it just based on those because that's all I have to work with right now. So with all three budgets, the school, the municipal, and the county, and the revenues, if I was to keep the mill rate the same, I have an overlay shortfall of about $501,000. So in order to get that to the overlay I have currently for this year, we would have to cut an additional $600,000 or find a combination of other revenue and cuts to equal $600,000. Now, if we decided we didn't want to cut anymore and leave it just the way everybody's presented it, you would be looking at a 1.35 mill rate increase. So that it gives you two spectrums. It shows you what you would have to raise for a mill rate in order to cover everybody's budget as it's presented. Some of the changes in the budget this year, you're going to notice that I have transferred to all the departments all the benefits, which includes your workers' comp, your medical insurance, life insurance, unemployment, retirement, and Social Security. Those used to be under their own line item. They were not associated with departments, and they should be because they're all personnel expenses. So they've been transferred to each department. So you'll see decreases in one part of the budget, and you're going to see increases in everybody's department. The lease purchases that have been in several departments that do lease purchase programs, I have transferred all of that to long-term debt because that's what it is. It's a debt payment. Once we start the lease program, it is debt, and it's transferred all by itself into long-term debt. It was very difficult for me to see what we had out there with it spread out by department, and this is something that we have to budget. I mean, we can't decide we're not going to budget. They are lease payments, so if they're stuck under the long-term debt somewhere else in the budget, which they are, that's going to make it easier for all of us. We also have separate all our bond payments, so that's in a separate debt schedule as well in the budget. I also decreased a couple of line items in the budget to pay for the energy bond. Remember, we're not supposed to be raising any more taxes, and we didn't, so we decreased some line items, and I stuck the decrease over to pay for the debt. And the debt on the town side from the general fund is 72% of the overall payment, and the other 28% is coming out of the sewer budget. So we didn't have to fund the whole debt, just 72% of it. Let's see here. The other thing that I did was I transferred the telephone and cell phones to all the departments. Those were under the town buildings account, and those should really be associated with the departments, and that's where they are now. What I didn't do is the electricity and the fuel, because we really need, for the first year, Ryan and I talked about it, for the first year to have a handle on the true savings from the energy contracts. We need to keep them where they are right now. Once we go through one whole year, so we know exactly what the departments are going to be spending on, or the buildings are going to be spending on heating fuel, then I'll transfer that next year. So you'll see another bunch of changes next year, so that you'll see the true cost of running that building. Not department, but building, so to speak. We did do some restructuring here in the town office staff, so that that reduced some wage lines for us. Let's see here. One of the big ticket items, I thought my budget was looking rather well until I talked to Ryan, and we needed to budget our MDOT match for the Route 196, and that's about $57,000. That's not in this current year's budget. It'll be in the upcoming budget. It's to pay for our portion. So that was a hit for me. But that's just a one-time deal. It's not going to be, we won't have to raise that further. When we come to the Main Street project, that's going to be quite a bit more money, our share, so we'll probably have to go to bond for that. But in that, in my budget figure, that $57,000 is in there, and that's not in this current year's budget. So I think as you go through the budget and you read the budget explanations, you'll see where we made some significant changes, like in the rec department, and broke out programs and broke out all the revenue. We've pretty well detailed that for you. I think you're going to find it pretty interesting. It was interesting for me going through this process. We also did some cost sharing with the wastewater department and the water department. I took, for the administration and benefits, I took 8% of the finance director and my salary and charged that off to the wastewater department, which is an additional revenue source for us, and in the amount of $16,051. On the flip side of that, we are budgeting for meter readings, because they do read the meters, and we take those readings in order to do our sewer bills. So I've budgeted about $10,000 for meter readings, and another $28,000 for radio read if they decide to upgrade their software. And we will be budgeting a portion of that. Under the water, that's with the water department, I'm sorry, not the wastewater. But with the water department, I did 5% of the finance director and 5% of the manager treasurer, which that totals to $10,033. That's with the benefits and the administration. So you can see with the meter readings and the benefits, doing the cost sharing, that kind of is a wash right there. So it's not really costing either one of us. One of us is going to go to revenue and one of us is going to pay an expense. So it's just the radio read that will cost us a little more, but in the long run, it will save us money. So those are most of the changes throughout the budget. We still have some more work to do. We need to figure out what we're going to do with the Parks Department. And Verla is here tonight. This is her budget. We have the budget presented as if the director was going to still be here. And if you do have any questions for her, this will be your only opportunity tonight to ask any if you have any. It's a pretty cut and dry budget, but I just wanted you to have that opportunity in case you do. So we'll be coming back with some options with that. And the insurances, I don't have any quotes yet. We're going to be meeting the first week in April on the health insurance, and I'm still waiting for quotes on the property and casualty, but I have built in percentage increases right now, so that could either go up or go down as we move forward through the process. I'm still trying to figure out what my revenues are going to be. It's very early on, so in some cases I've budgeted the same as what I've had this year in this current budget. If I have to change that, I will as we move forward.
Council have any questions or comments for Diane on the brief budget overview?
I do like the way you presented the budget. It makes it easy to find cuts. so it's, I was told a long time ago that this was a budget to have, and no one else listened, but now that you're here, and the budget that was presented before to me for look-see was probably one of your budgets, so that's why.
Oh, really? Isn't that funny?
I have a brief question. Just going back to the beginning when you had talked about the overlay shortfall, just over $500,000. To bring it up to where we are, is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay. To bring it up to where we are today, we would need to cut an additional $600,000.
Right, to get it to a positive 100 or so, yep.
And that includes your preparation for abatements from the revaluation. That's why you want the overlay.
Exactly, that's why we need to have something. I don't know where the revals are gonna go. I don't know if that whole process will be done and over with. Do you know, Kathy, if by the time we do commitment, we're probably still gonna be having hearings with property owners, is that correct, maybe?
Informal hearings should start in May, and they schedule a week for that, so, yeah.
If somebody doesn't come in for the hearings and they end up getting their tax bill, is there anything they can do at that time? Can they still file an abatement? See, I think that's where you're gonna see a lot of them is when they see their tax bill. Yeah, so that's why for this year, we need to make sure that we have some overlay.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we would need to cut $600,000 to bring the overlay to where you want it. But with your scenario that you've gave us here, that includes a school department with their
Exactly.
Politically, say this correct, their request for their budget.
Right, with my proposed budget and their proposed budget, yeah.
And, so,
Or you could raise the mill rate 1.35.
but by covering, reducing the additional local funds as we have already shared with them that we plan to, by $600,000, really in hindsight, that would cover this increase you have, the increase that we would need to fund
As
for
proposed
cuts.
right now, but I know I'm going to have some changes in my budget,
Okay.
so.
I just wanna
That's
make-
as of right this minute.
I just want to make sure that I understand it because I want to make sure that I come to the budget meetings or budget workshops with, my questions and everything's prepared.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I have the full, clear picture in my mind and I'm not thinking about scenarios at home that aren't realistic because I
Right.
don't have the correct information. So thank you.
Yeah, 'cause right now the overlay's 501,290 to the bad, so if you just cut that, you're not going to have any overlay at all, so that's why you need to
Yeah.
cut another
Yeah,
100,000.
we need to cut more, yeah. Great. Council, any other comments or questions for Diane? All right, we'll get prepared and get right into this next week. Next item, please.
Is C, Town Manager's Report.
The only thing I have to report is the finance director is going to begin full-time on March 30th.
Great. He'll be a great addition to the town of Lisbon, for sure. All right, next item, please.
Is audience participation and response for new items?
Thank you for coming, Verla. I'd open the floor for audience participation. Make sure I'm not going too fast. Mr.
I just have a quick question. My name is Dennis Campano, 17 Grandview Street, Lisbon. On the exemption, is that in your budget, the homestead exemption, that we're going to go to 100% evaluation?
That's not in my tax calculation sheet. It says.
Do you
if-
think that's going to happen?
I don't know. It's all depends on what the, unless you've got more information, unless Kathy has more information, I haven't heard anything about that, other than what's in the governor's budget.
Well, it was my understanding that because we revaled, that we were going to get 100%. So we get the full $10,000 exemption
Right.
instead of
That's-
partial.
Right, that's.
Is that still,
If we end up being at 100%, then you would get 100% of the, whatever the percentage we're at is what percentage of the homestead you are going
and
to
you
get.
won't know that until when?
We're not going to know until the governor's budget, because he's proposing some changes to the homestead.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I thought there wasn't going to
Kathy
be
can-
any changes this year.
Now, Kathy can answer that for you if.
Kathy, could you just come up to the podium?
I'm Kathy Malloy, I'm the assessor, and I listened in Monday. They presented to the taxation committee what's in the governor's budget. he wants to eliminate the homestead exemption for anyone under the age of 65.
Yeah.
So anyone under the age of 65,
I
if
just don't
this
make it.
passes, your tax
I'm
bill...
not quite old enough.
Your tax bill is automatically going to go up $200.
And-
He wants to double it to $20,000 exemption for
Okay.
65 and older.
All
So
right.
I would kind of recommend to anybody that thinks that's a stinky idea is to contact your legislators.
Thank
You
you.
know, because it was presented to the committee, and the committee didn't even,
Flinch.
you know, so I don't know what they're thinking. So I'd be making some phone calls.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Yep. Did that answer your question? Okay, good. Is there anybody else? Mr. Willie?
I had a quick question about the mill rate, and then another question. You mentioned it was if the budgets go through as requested and directed by the town council, what was the mill rate that will go up? And is that taking into consideration, well, no, if they stay as is, I mean, as is, like with the extra 600,000
Right,
or
the
whatever.
proposed
Yeah.
budgets,
It would,
yes.
it would go up 1 point what?
3.5.
1.35, is that 1.35 mill rate?
That's
with the
$1.30.
With the new reval, or is that
No, that's
currently?
right currently, because I have no figures on anything new. So it's the current values with the current budget we're in right
You
now.
know what the percentage would be with the new valuation?
I have no idea.
You have no, okay.
Would be the same dollar value. Whatever your value goes up, the mill rate drops. It's
Oh,
still-
okay, okay.
Still gonna end up being X amount of dollars.
Okay. And just so I understand, I was trying to listen to all the numbers. The town's budget right now, what is the over and under from what the town manager was directed by the town council to cut? I think it was 300 to the town and 600 to the school. Where does the town stand right
I s-
now?
I still have about 200,000 to eliminate
Okay.
budget.
So with that 200,000 that you were required to eliminate and the 600,000 that the schools to eliminate, that should lower the mill rate? Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That's as everything's
it stands right
valued,
now.
As it stands right now,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? All right, see none. I don't have any response. I think we responded as we went along. And the next item, please.
Is council communications?
Sure. We'll actually start right over Greg. Greg, do you have anything?
Just one note I'd like to mention, looking over last year's paperwork and the proposed bonds that we had, I note that for this tax year, the estimated mill rate increase for the gym and the track was a total of about 1.13 increase to the mill rate. So that's what was given to the voters when they voted. So just food for thought.
All set, Mark? Eric?
She's already left, but would like to thank Verla for all her hard work and dedication that she's put in over the years, and just wanted to make note of that.
Roger?
Yeah, I've got a response to Larry email. Larry, we are, right now, we're looking into a couple of different scenarios with the Finance Committee. But what we're gonna do is Dylan's gonna contact them and see if we can get a meeting on Monday and to vote for a chair and a co-chair at least, because there is 4 of you, and we're gonna try to do that, to see if we can get 4 to come in and do something. I know you'll go come, so 3, how's that? Maybe, I think Charlie will come, but we're gonna try that and see what happens, go with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Dylan, is it all right to speak?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 candidates and 3 positions out there right now. We need those other 2 people in there right away so that we can get going.
We want more, I'll answer that. We want more candidates, so we can, I'll explain it to you later if you want, but,
Please.
yeah.
All right. does the council have any objection with Roger's proposal for me to email them and try to put a meeting together with them so they can come in and see if they can get organized? Because right now they're not. Roger ran it by me just before the meeting tonight, and I didn't see any problems with it. He originally was going to ask Diane to do it, but I think Diane has a lot on her plate right now, and really the Finance Committee is an advisory board to the council. So I think it'd be better if we are going to, or if you would like me to set up a meeting for them, I think it'd be best if the council does it and not town manager.
I'd like to see that, but I'd also like to entertain that we have applications ready for us on the next meeting. I understand wanting more, but
If people have
put
applied,
it
we
out
should.
and make sure we get,
Sure.
Is it advertised
get
right now?
those positions filled.
Is it advertised right now
It's
still?
still on the sign.
Okay.
yeah.
All right, make sure we'll have a discussion of some sort with that Finance Committee on the next budget, on the next agenda. The council doesn't have any objection with me contacting that committee to see if they can get themselves in order? All right. Anything else, Roger?
No, that'll do it.
All right. Anything for Dale or Chris?
I have nothing.
All right. I just wanted to quickly make sure everybody knows. After the last meeting, I had a couple phone calls from people wondering, why the council is taking a different approach to the budget this year. And really, everyone I talked to really thought it was the direction because we have a new town manager. But what I wanted to make clear to make sure everybody understands is that we do have a new town manager in place now, but we have a council that is operating differently from the past. And the council doesn't take direction from the town manager. The town manager takes direction from the council. So if there's you have a concern with the budget or a process or a schedule, whatever it may be, the council is the one that sets that. We set policy, not the town manager. So I just want to make sure that you folks do understand that it's not the manager making these decisions, it's the council. And the second thing I have is I do have a lot of emails from coming back from vacation, so if you have emailed me and you are in my pile, I will get back to you, so I appreciate your patience through the process. That's all that I have. Anything else? Next item, please.
Is Order 2015-73 to adjourn?
Open the floor for a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Order passed. Thank you.
Thank you and have a good night.
Again, I'm opposed and you didn't take my vote.
You want to hang out here?
Want to stay?
Yeah, I want to stay.
Rick, I don't need to stay here anymore.
You can stay.
You don't even count me anymore. I see how it is. Marla doesn't like me anymore.